What's up, everybody? This is Alex Christoforou from the Duran, and I'm here with Alexander Mercouris, editor-in-chief of the Duran. And today we're going to be taking a look at Trump being a Russian spy. So, Alexander, did Vladimir Putin find Trump maybe 10 years ago, maybe 20 years ago, maybe 30, 40 years ago? Did he find him? Did the KGB find him? Did the FSB find him? Did they groom him? Did they indoctrinate him with the Russian ideology? Did they make him into a New York real estate billionaire? And then did they propel him to win the White House so that he could place more sanctions on Russia, ramp up the war in Syria, and just basically cause all kinds of trouble for Russia?
Well, the short answer, Alex, to all those questions is no, but it is absolutely extraordinary. It is truly bizarre that there are so many people who think so or say they think so. And the most bizarre thing of all, the thing that I find completely crazy, is that we now know, thanks to the New York Times, that there were some people in the FBI, apparently, who thought that, and that when their former director, James Comey, was sacked, I should stress, after a memo from Deputy Attorney General Rod Rosenstein, who has been the person who created the Mueller investigation and who appointed Mueller and who has presided over the whole Russiagate investigation. After a memo from him saying that Comey was completely incompetent and should be sacked, nonetheless, there were some crazy people out there in the FBI who saw this as some kind of proof that Donald Trump was a Russian spy. Now, I mean, really, I mean, it's very difficult to get on top of these, the minds of these people. It seems to me that, as I said, they've completely lost their marbles if they really think these things. There is no evidence. I find myself, stunned to say that. There is no evidence that Donald Trump is a Russian spy or ever was a Russian spy or has ever even considered any kind, worked for Russia in any kind of way. And as that New York Times article admitted, surprise, surprise, when the FBI looked into all of this, no evidence to that effect ever came forward. I mean, we're living in a world of fantasy, and it's difficult to understand sometimes what it is about Donald Trump that provokes these reactions among some people.
Let's step back and go to the genesis of all of this. And we've said this over dozens of videos. Of course, Clapper would never lie. I mean, of course he wouldn't lie. Of course. Nor would Brennan. He would never lie either, especially under oath. But was it not Clapper, and was it not Brennan, and was it not all these guys that started, and of course Hillary Clinton, the DNC, and the Democrats, that started the whole 13 intelligence agencies have come to the conclusion that Russia meddled in the elections, of which that entire document was pure fiction?
Yeah, it's a confected narrative which was clearly intended to delegitimize the election of Donald Trump. I mean, Christopher Steele, no less, the man who wrote that dossier that was, in fact, the starting point of the whole collusion allegation, he's admitted as much. He's said that Hillary Clinton wanted it as insurance in case she lost the election. I mean, how much more, straightforward can it be than that? And yet it seems amazing that there are still some people who cling on to this thesis. Can I say very simply about Donald Trump? Donald Trump is an American nationalist. He's a patriot. That is what he's all about. That's what America First is. he is also someone who looks at what he sees as America's best interests are. He thinks it's in America's best interests at the moment to stand up to China, because he sees China as having, taken action against the United States economically, which led to the US losing many manufacturing jobs and seeing its homeland, its manufacturing homeland, hollowed out. He thinks it is in America's interests to have a good relationship with Russia, because he wants to distance Russia from China, and he understands that the Russians could also help with fighting some of this Islamic terrorism that the United States has been fighting ever since the 9/11 terrorist attacks. And these are entirely rational and patriotic policies. It is incredible to me that these entirely sane policies of Donald Trump's should have led to people suspecting him of being a Russian agent. It just goes to show, to my mind, how utterly warped the whole political debate has become in the United States, and how fixated on Donald Trump the deep state in the United States has become.
What is wrong, geopolitically speaking, as an analyst, what is wrong with a strategy that Trump is telegraphing, where he's saying, look, China is our number one rival. It is an adversary. They're both, the two strongest countries right now on the world stage. So yeah, here you have the U.S. number one, and here you have upstart number two trying to take over that number one spot. So that's a rival, plain and simple. What's wrong then with the strategy of saying, look, instead of Russia cozying up to China, let's try to get Russia, move them away from China? I mean, this has been done in the past before with Nixon and Kissinger, just in a reverse format. So it's not a bad strategy. I mean, strictly speaking, geopolitically. Whether it's feasible or not is a different story. But
it's a very good strategy from a U.S. point of view. It makes total sense. It's incredible. It's bizarre that people are resisting the logic of it in the United States. I mean, I personally think that it's not the optimal strategy for the United States. I think the optimal strategy is for the United States to do a deal with China and to do a deal with Russia. But if you accept the logic, and one can understand the logic, that China is the United States' most likely adversary going forward, then obviously you want to draw away from China, Russia, which is the country that will tilt the balance in China's favor. It's entirely logical. And instead what we see is that we have the United States, because of Russiagate, incapable of developing a good relationship with Russia, so that Russia is being pushed together with China. I'm going to end with something that a Russian minister apparently said to Joseph Biden when he was vice president of the United States. He came over to Russia in, I think it was 2013. And he said to Putin, Joseph Biden said to Putin, Russia cannot take on the United States. And Putin said to him that no, Russia cannot take on the United States by itself, but it carries the weight that will decide who in the end can. In other words, that Russia has the weight to make the difference between China.
It's the spoiler.
Between the United States and China. Now, Putin said that to Biden. Apparently, that was said in 2011, and it is true. We know that he said that because, as I said, members of the Russian government have confirmed this. It's logical. Trump understands that logic. It's incredible that so few people in the United States seem to.
How embarrassing is it to have the New York Times, to have the mainstream media say that Trump, their president, he is their president. He won fair and square. He out-campaigned Hillary. You can say anything you want. Like Trump, hate Trump, it doesn't matter. He worked harder, he had a better message, he had better marketing, and at the end of the day, he was a much better candidate than Hillary Clinton ever could be. That's just the fact. But what is it, how does it make the U.S. look to have so many media organizations, to have the other party, the Democrat Party, say that their president, that the president was a spy of another country, and to have the intelligence agencies actually investigate that ridiculous notion. And it is. A 5-year-old understands how ridiculous that notion is.
Well, it makes the United States look terrible. It means that people don't have confidence in the internal stability of the United States anymore, and in mature decision-making by the United States anymore. Because people around the world, I'm going to say this straightforwardly, various political leaders around the world have had dealings with Donald Trump. Outside of the neoliberal leaders of Europe, the interesting thing is Trudeau, Merkel, Theresa May, Cameron before, I think, not Cameron, but anyway.
The neoliberal rat pack,
exactly.
Obamas and all these guys.
Exactly. Other than that bunch, political leaders around the world like him. I mean, we've discussed how he gets on well with Xi Jinping. He gets on well with Putin. He's had a difficult relationship with Modi in India, but things are sorted out, and there's a lot of respect for him there. Shinzo Abe in Japan and the East Asian leaders, when they met him at an ASEAN summit, they got on with him. They didn't like Obama, by the way, but they got on with him. They understand him. They understand where Donald Trump is coming from. They don't feel that he is this, Russian spy nonsense that people are talking about. And when they see the United States undermining, the United States deep state undermining its own president, that makes them very critical of the United States. So now you see India doing deals with Russia to buy S-400 missiles, doing deals with Iran to buy Iranian oil in return for rupees. You see Turkey doing deals with Russia to buy S-400 missiles, and very angry about the way that Bolton, the national security advisor, appears to be undermining Trump. We see the South Koreans forging forward with relationships with the North Koreans, again, without really getting this squared with the US. And the reason all this is happening is that despite the fact that they like Donald Trump personally, they are not sure of his position, and they're not sure that the United States is a country they can work with anymore. So, I mean, when you said it is terrible and humiliating when we see the New York Times behaving in this way, it is. And I'm astonished that more people in the United States don't see that.
Can I make a comment, and you could say if it's a correct assessment? I would say that maybe the countries, the international community, actually probably understands Trump fairly well. I mean, I think Trump's a pretty straightforward, straight shooter kind of guy. Mm. But maybe these countries are kind of saying, look, you have one CEO and one leader, but then you have his entire board, the deep state, and like a whole nother, if you're looking at it from a company standpoint, you have one leader, and then you have a whole nother group of managers and board directors and other people who are trying to impede this leader's decision-making process. And I think that's what a lot of countries are starting to see. They're saying, okay, so are we dealing with Trump because we understand where he's coming from, or are we going to have to deal with this entire deep state, permanent state establishment, which had got us into Iraq, which bombed the hell out of Libya, which got us into Syria, which bombed Serbia, this cabal of neocons and warmongers that have literally ruined the entire planet for the last 20 years. But are we going to have to deal with them still, or can we finally deal with this straight shooter?
I think you said it exactly correct. I mean, as I said, I've noticed when other world leaders speak with Donald Trump, they get on with him. They can understand him. He understands them. He listens to what they say. They listen to him. Obviously, excluding, as you said, the neoliberal Euro-Atlantic rat pack of Trudeau and the rest. But if they cannot deal with him, if agreements they make with him won't stick because he is constantly being undermined in this way, and he is not in proper control of the US government, then ultimately they will have to sideline him, and they will sideline the United States as well in the process. I cannot see how that is in the US interest, or quite apart from the fact that he is as you rightly said, democratically and constitutionally elected president of the United States, when Donald Trump's strategic interests, instincts are, in my opinion, the right ones. I mean, he has his blind spots. Iran, I think, is one. But overall, I think his grasp of foreign policy is about right.
Why are they not investigating? This is obviously a rhetorical question, but I would like you to answer it anyway. And I think a lot of our viewers are also going to understand where I'm going with this. Clinton gave a speech in Moscow for the tune of, I believe he got paid 500,000 USDs for that speech. Not a bad payday. No. If I'm wrong on the amounts, let me know in the comments down below. Yeah. Hillary Clinton had the entire uranium one thing with Russia. She's been in many photos with Putin. Oh no, she was in photos with Putin. Putin was in New York visiting Chuck Schumer, and they were eating like a pretzel or a hot dog together. And, where was the uproar there? You had Obama, on a hot mic moment telling Medvedev, don't worry, once I get reelected again, I'll have more flexibility. Flexibility for what? Who knows? Why? I don't remember one photo or one conversation that Trump had with Putin or anyone Russian for that matter that leaked to the press before he actually had the official meetings with Putin as president of the United States. So how come the press is not jumping on all these incidences?
Well, the reason is because, of course, they're against Trump and they're for Hillary Clinton, and as they were for Barack Obama. I mean, what has clearly happened in the United States over the last 30 years is that, starting with the Bill Clinton administration, the Democrats, their allies, members of the deep state, Hillary Clinton and all this crowd have established a lockhold over the US media and the bureaucracy. And they regard anybody, any outsider, any interloper, someone like Donald Trump, who comes in and upsets their position and tries to reverse their policies as a threat that must be eliminated. And so what they themselves do, is not looked at or scrutinized in any way. And what Donald Trump does is not just scrutinized, it's exaggerated and fabricated about and talked about in this absurd degree. And, one looks at all of this and one shakes one's head with despair, because the only country that has been damaged by it, as I said before, is the United States itself, which is locked into an unrealistic foreign policy of confronting both Russia and China at one and the same time, and has its own domestic policies set in constant crisis, with a democratically and constitutionally elected president being charged for things that are not just that he hasn't done, spying or being an agent for Russia, but which on any assessment are simply absurd.
Now that William Barr is looking set to become Trump's AG, you've always mentioned that Trump's weakest part in his presidency was not having an AG on his side.
Yes.
Now that William Barr looks like he's going to be that man, do you think Trump's going to find the confidence, the strength to start releasing or to start pressuring the DOJ to release, for example, unredacted FISA docs for Carter Page, any other classified information that has not been released by the DOJ all these documents that show exactly what Rosenstein, what Comey, what Brennan, what Clapper, what all these guys, Strzok, Page, what they were all up to. Because to date, we haven't really seen anything coming out, or at least anything that has not been so heavily redacted that, you can't make out what the hell, all these guys were texting back and forth and what they were saying.
Well, to answer your question is, I sincerely hope so. And coming back to the redactions, you're absolutely right. They are incredible. They go far beyond what national security interests require. That's not just my view. It's the view of people like Grassley, Lindsey Graham, people who are certainly not soft on protecting the national security of the United States. These redactions are clearly not intended to protect U.S. national security. They are intended to protect the deep state in its plot against Donald Trump. And I'm sorry to talk in that way, but to my mind, that is clearly what happened in 2016. There was an attempt by elements of the US bureaucracy, perhaps not the whole of it, to try and prevent Donald Trump either winning the election or, in the event that he did win the election, being delegitimized. And you've seen sustained attempts to, as I said, again, to basically present him as some kind of Russian spy. You've seen FBI investigations into him. We've seen the entire Russiagate investigation. We've seen people like Michael Flynn, his first national security advisor, driven out of office and prosecuted on what I frankly find incredible and absurd charges. We've seen what I have always said is the true scandal of the 2016 election, which was the surveillance, the illegal surveillance, or what I would deem the illegal surveillance of people who were associated with Donald Trump's campaign. So I sincerely hope that William Barr, as the new Attorney General of the United States, which I predict he will be, I sincerely hope that he will step in to bring all this to a stop, and that he will make everything finally clear and open and bring it out into the light. I have to say that if this were to happen, it would be a victory of hope over past experience, but we will see.
But it is in Trump's hands.
It is in Trump's hands. Up to now, this is the other thing that's been so extraordinary about this thing. He's always backed off doing that. He's always been, I think, frightened of the bureaucracy and over-impressed by the concerns of some people in the Republican Party in Congress who, frankly, are not his friends. And I think he's got to start looking for real allies in the bureaucracy, and they do exist, and in Congress, and start taking actions which are both in his interests and in those of the United States as well.
I agree. Alexander Mercouris, Editor-in-Chief of the Duran, thank you very much. Guys, if you like this video, click the subscribe button down below and click on the notifications bell to get notifications every time we push out a new video. Visit the Duran shop, pick up a t-shirt, help support the Duran, and you can also donate to the Duran. PayPal and Patreon links are in the description box down below. And of course, you get a copy of this video in audio format. Follow us on iTunes and on Soundcloud. And don't forget, go to theduran.com and take a look at what Alexander is reading. He links it up every day on the site. Alexander Mercouris, thank you very much. Until next time, everybody, take care.